Applejack, what is it?
Damn! What is that? Oh, hey Nick. That was a bit of a scare. How's it going?
I'm alright, had a bit of a heart attack there for a second, but I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I mean, after this solid display from Merryweather covering the two hardest characters to write for, I'm feeling pretty good about this season.
I know, right? There hasn't been an episode yet this season that I'd consider to be one of the worst in the series. I mean, the worst might have been Daring Don't? And even that was alright. Good season so far.
Okay, well, since we both seem to be on the same page here, you want to help me properly explain why Bats was a solid outing?
Sure, sounds like fun. Want to lead us off?
Alright, so we start off with Applejack waiting for the sun to come up to begin apple bucking day. Because apparently in Equestria, the day only begins when the sun comes up.
I actually noticed an interesting little tidbit here. Back in Season 1, Apple Bucking Day happened just a little while after the Summer Sun celebration. Now, in Season 4, 1 year later, Apple Bucking Day is happening a little while after the Summer Sun celebration. This show is making a legit yearly timeline. If Winter Wrap-Up happens again this season, I'm going to squeeze so friggin' hard.
Honestly, I gave up on trying to put the episodes in chronological order after Season 2. It just hurts my head too much.
I might have a video planned for that, but then again, maybe I'm just completely mad.
Wow. Good luck with that. So she starts bucking, only to find that the apples are basically mush. It's like me when I tried to clean out my fridge.
Remind me never to eat at your house. So AJ looks in the tree and finds some vampire fruit bats in them. This sends AJ into full-blown panic mode as it's all hands on claws on deck at Sweet Apple Acres.
She particularly doesn't want the bats to get their hands on her blue ribboned apple.
That apple is on steroids.
Yeah, I don't know about TLC Applejack, but you've clearly put something into that apple.
Forget the fruit bats, don't give this thing a baseball bat.
Fluttershy attempts to reason with Applejack that maybe what the bats are doing isn't really all that bad. And so here we have the main theme for this episode. Two characters on either side of an argument. And unlike Over a Barrel, the motivations the two characters have for making these arguments make sense. These are Applejack's apples the bats are eating, and Fluttershy cares for other living creatures.
This is my main problem with the episode. It makes AJ seem like the bad guy when she legitimately had the most to lose by the bat's intrusion. Not only could she lose her surefire blue ribbon-taking steroid apple, but also every other apple on her orchard, and she has Granny Smith's story to back up her claims. This is her livelihood we're talking about. If she has no apples, she has no money or food. So I was on her side in this episode. I thought they should have gotten rid of the bats by any means. On the other hand, Fluttershy's only remotely tangible point is that the bats spitting out the seeds will cause more apples to grow, apples that the bats will then eat. Every other point of hers is based around it feels wrong, and yet they villainize AJ for that. Throughout the song, AJ was draped in shadow while Flutters was bathed in light, and if you don't think that represents anything, then please consult the greatest movie of our time, Die Hard.
Well, I would argue that Fluttershy also thinks that the bats have no choice and there is nothing else around for them to eat. Also, I think the way Fluttershy is unable to come up with a convincing argument fits well with that meek side of her character. And it's not like the writers aren't aware that Applejack is making the better argument. The other four and Spike all agree. But I have to say, I love the visuals for this song, with the switching between the bright colours of Fluttershy's parts and the darker tone of Applejack's. The tune has something of a Nightmare Before Christmas vibe to it. Except that unlike most of the songs in that film, it's actually good.
So the other four agree that AJ is right and that they need to find a way to get rid of the bats.
She explains about the last time there was an infestation like this, and Rainbow is horrified to learn that there was no cider.
I know Golden Fox has been all white they'd have to bring up the cider here, but honestly, I like this subplot. Rainbow has been shown to have a one-track mind. When she gets something in her head, it's hard to get it out. So it's understandable, to me at least, that the first thing the Dashie would be thinking of would be the cider.
I agree, it's a nice bit of continuity that also fits her character very well. Like I said in another review, I'm really liking how there's a bit more of an effort at continuity this season. But one thing about this that did bug me is just wondering if a parent watching this with their kids, having not seen Super Speedy Cider Squeezy 6000, might think Rainbow has a drinking problem.
Twilight finds a spell to convince the bats to stop eating the apples. I guess we can add make you not want to eat spells to Twilight's ever-growing list of highly frightening spells that make me really glad she's on our side.
Yeah, this brings me to something about this show that's bugged me for a while. I mean, aside from the way that she just happens to know these spells being a bit Deus Ex Machina, I'm finding it really disturbing how many times Twilight has messed with free will. Also, thanks Spike for that completely pointless line that is literally your only contribution to the story. Seriously, why is he in this episode? He did fuck all.
So Apple Bucking Day is officially back on and everything is wonderful forever. But as they walk away, Fluttershy begins eyeing an apple eagerly. I honestly didn't think anything of the subtle hints of Fluttershy not being quite right after Twilight's spell. I was wondering why Fluttershy was looking at the apple, but I didn't think too much of it, especially since she seemed normal for a while after that.
I think I'd agree that it was a fairly subtle hint that something was up. Some people might not have even noticed it the first time watching. But I think I would have preferred it if they had just not had it at all. Anything that clues us into something that the characters don't know about is bad in my book. But hey, it's not nearly as bad as games ponies play.
So now it's Apple Bucking Day Take 2. Unfortunately, nothing has changed. Still a bunch of nasty, mushy apples from Buck's fridge. The spell has obviously failed, and the fruit bats must be stopped! Kinda strange how Fluttershy didn't try sticking up for the bats here, but whatever.
But apparently the spell did actually work, because the bats don't seem at all interested in the apples when Rainbow holds one out. By the way, I love the tiny magazine this bat is reading. What kind of store would sell bat-sized magazines?
Well, this is a world where the animals are almost as sentient as the ponies, so maybe they have stores for small critters or something. Also, do members of Rarity's family have apple magnets in their horns or something?
So in order to find out who's eating the apples, Twilight suggests a stakeout. This is where the episode became less good in my opinion. Up to this point it had been an interesting debate between friends about how best to deal with a pest. But from this point on, it turned into more of a running away from a monster story. Not bad, just not as interesting as the first half.
Yeah, unfortunately, the stories seem to be doing that a lot this season. Similar things happened in both Daring Don't and Power Ponies, where the first act started promisingly, but the story devolved once they found out about Daring Do's identity and when they jumped into the comic book, respectively.
Just before they begin the stakeout, Fluttershy makes a rather odd remark about being really hungry while staring at an apple. Okay, the first hint was okay since it was fairly subtle, but this is just making it way too obvious that something is up with her.
Yeah, when Fluttershy started going into a trance at the sight of another apple, I thought something might be up. Bit surprised she didn't pounce on AJ's cutie mark. AJ tells everyone to ready their light signals, and Pinky shows off the lessons that she apparently got from the Maniac on how to hold stuff with her mane.
Yeah, and what was up with Applejack collapsing when she shines the light in her eyes? So anyway, after Rainbow has a brief tussle with what any fool could have guessed was a scarecrow, Applejack comes across...
Ah! Damn nature, you scary!
Yeah, I agree, that part genuinely creeped me out the first time. I love that design with the bat wings and the slightly darker coat. What I don't love is Twilight's explanation.
The spell was supposed to go right onto the bats like this. But somehow the spell must have backfired. It took the vampire fruit bat's desire to be vampire fruit bats and transferred that desire into Fluttershy.
Firstly, I don't really understand how Twilight could have known this. She had to look this spell up, so it's not like she could have had this happen when she'd used the spell before. Second, she doesn't actually explain why this desire got transferred. Is this just something that happens when you cast spells while also doing the stare?
Yeah, the explanation of how the batification happened was basically a bunch of magic mumbo-jumbo that explained pretty much nothing. Even by the "this is a show about magical talking horses" standards, that made no damn sense. So they take off looking for her, kind of poorly since they end up running away from her, and Flutterbat turns even more into a bat. Makes you wonder what would happen if they didn't fix her right away.
Yeah, maybe it's one of those you must break the spell before sunrise things that you get in fantasy stories all the time. Interesting that we get a Batman reference here after not getting one last week when it would have been more appropriate.
Two Batman references actually, if you include the cutie mark in the spotlight in the sky used as a signal thing. Anyway, I thought the part where AJ said, "That's the least of my worries, I just want my friend back," spoke volumes, and the following scene where AJ sacrificed her steroid apple to lure Flutterbat. it made any animosity that may have been sparked by the first act of the episode dissipate.
Yeah, I really liked the development of Applejack and Fluttershy's relationship in this episode, after only brief interactions in the previous 3 seasons. I'm not entirely sure what's going on when she looks into the mirror at herself. She doesn't appear to be doing the stare. I guess because she's a bit more bat-like, she's also a bit confused when she sees herself suddenly. Some animals do act like that when they see themselves in a mirror.
Did you notice during this scene that Fluttershy's cutie mark changed to 3 bats? Twilight can create new cutie marks! Apple Bloom, there's your opportunity! So the rest of the main 6 are able to turn Flutter Bat back into Fluttershy while she's in her trance, and everything is wonderful forever.
I could have done without the confusing exchange between Pinky and Fluttershy. It seemed to take away from the moment for me. I know the joke is that it is confusing Fluttershy, but it's also confusing the audience unnecessarily, and it really wasn't all that funny.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. So then wait a second, did AJ put the sanctuary right next to a regular orchard? What's stopping them from jumping back into the regular orchard and invading again? Damn it, Best Pony, stop making me not like you!
I guess the bats could still be under the spell. But yeah, I really don't know why Applejack has this sudden change of heart about the bats.
So we come to the moral of the story. I wasn't huge on AJ's moral since the short-term solution of getting rid of the bats would have totally worked, both in the short and long term. But Fluttershy's moral was pretty good, since it's hard to tell friends no sometimes, and I can buy this moral. My only concern is if Fluttershy will retain this lesson, since Fluttershy has a bit of a habit of forgetting lessons.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the lesson is really good. It is kind of similar to the one in Over a Barrel, but I think it's done better here, since this is 2 friends that are not seeing eye to eye on something, which makes things more awkward. The only slight issue I have is the implication that Applejack was actually in the wrong the whole time, when in fact, as you say, what she suggested did make sense.
And the episode ends with a close-up to reveal that Fluttershy isn't as cured as we thought, as she still has fangs, albeit smaller ones. This is the 3rd time in the last 5 episodes, along with Castlemania and Power Ponies, where the writers threw in a last-second ending gag. So far we have a pony hiding in the shadows, a disappearing comic book, and a surprise set of fangs. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to try and Nancy Drew all these things together and see if I can find some connection.
Yeah, I am getting a bit sick of these cliffhanger endings now. I like having a few teasers that give me a reason to want to see what happens next, but I prefer it if they were just gradually revealing more of one big picture. However, like you said, right now these things don't seem to be connected in any way, which makes me think that these are just cliffhanger endings for the sake of having cliffhangers. Stop making us ask questions, DHX, and start giving us some answers.
Digi said something interesting on Twitter when this episode aired. To paraphrase, while Twilight Cornication was probably the show's shark jumping moment, the show may be doing it in the same way Supernatural did it. Full on, balls to the wall, batshit insanely, pun definitely intended. To me at this point, they're just giving us crazy stuff and seeing if it sticks. Daring Do is real? Sure, why not? The main 6 enter a comic book and become superheroes? Sounds like fun. Fluttershy turns into a bat? Who doesn't love bat ponies? At this point, I'm not sure what would faze me. I swear this season has tempered me.
Yeah, there does seem to be a bit more of a supernatural feel to this season. The only episode that hasn't really had anything like that so far was Flight to the Finish, which was also easily the best episode we've had so far. And when I look back at this episode, the stuff I liked more was before Flutterbat appeared. So it does seem like if this more supernatural feel to the season is going to continue, that may not be such a good thing. I don't mind them changing the style of the show, but it has to be for the better, and I'm not so sure if it is right now.
Also, have you noticed that ever since Princess Twilight Sparkle, Twilight hasn't talked to anyone outside the main 6 with the exception of Daring Do, who's a bit of a recluse and could be forgiven for not knowing about current events? So, no one has addressed her any differently, and I don't think she's even flown since the Season 4 premiere. I know we're only 7 episodes into the season, but this is still leaving me with a concerned raised eyebrow.
I'm going to disagree with you here. I'm fine with them just keeping Twilight's character the same as it was before, as long as it works for the better of the stories that they tell. I don't think they should try and force any kind of change to her just because she's an alicorn now. It seems a lot of people are suggesting that Twilight can just fix everything now. But if she did that, there would be no story. It doesn't make the character any less interesting or open up any problems for me. Is she not acting much like a princess? No. But I think I actually prefer it that way.
Overall, I enjoyed this episode a bunch. It certainly wasn't the best episode of the season. I'd probably rank it somewhere in the middle of the season, and it wasn't particularly deep, but the atmosphere was creepy and pretty intense in the second half. Flutterbat was awesome. Fluttershy's moral was great, and the more I listen to Stop the Bats, the more I like it. It's similar to the Find a Pet song, but better put together. If it didn't vilify AJ in the first half, I'd call it a great episode. Overall, it gets an 83 out of 100.
I agree, another episode that is just very enjoyable. It covers an interesting issue with what to do when two friends can't agree on something, though I would have preferred it if they had shown it from a more neutral perspective, and the second half kind of forgets about this issue until the end. The song has some really nice visuals, and also a good creepy and catchy tune to it. The design of Flutterbat and the visuals in the second half were awesome to look at, and it's also nice to see Fluttershy and Applejack interact with one another.
Well, that was a fun review. So, what happens now?
Well, normally I just sit here and wait till next week, but I guess I'm going to have to get you out of here first. Let me see if I can find the...
Wow!
Okay, I didn't know that was going to happen.